wonder though, the NHS can't cope now. How on earth is it going to cope in April when it stands to lose tens and tens of thousands of staff? And Priti Patel is set to unveil a scientific advisory committee to provide advice on ways of checking how old an asylum seeker is. She wants to stop what she calls the appalling abuse of our system by the practice of single-grown adult men masquerading as children. It'll be no surprise to you, though, to know that many people are livid about this idea. But surely it's just basic common sense and something that's long overdue. And a Love Islander. I've got to be honest, one that I've never really heard of until today, but apparently is very popular all the less, she has caused outrage by basically saying that we've all got the same 24 hours in a day and we can all be successful if we just put our minds to it and work hard enough. Is she right? Because many seem to think not. We'll have all of that to come and more, but first let's have a look at tonight's news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. These are your headlines. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, is warning 70% of patients in intensive care with COVID are unvaccinated. It says 200 troops are being deployed to London hospitals as NHS staff absences rose 59% in a week due to isolation. A further 150 soldiers will support the North West Ambulance Service. Meanwhile, in Wales, First Minister Mark Drakeford says Omicron is now the dominant strain there, but denies the Welsh NHS is overwhelmed. Bupa's former Chief Medical Officer Andrew Valence-Owen has told GB News the move is positive for the NHS.
People should be reassured that we've had the sense to bring the army in. We saw during the crisis last year that the Nightingale hospitals were almost built and staffed by the army, and they did a brilliant job. They didn't have to be used much in the end. So I think I'm reassured by the fact that it is recognised that we need to bring the army in.
Labour MP Jack Dromey has died suddenly at his flat in Birmingham, aged 73. It's understood he died of natural causes. The Labour Party has issued a statement on behalf of his family and his wife, who is long-serving Labour MP Harriet Harman, saying he'd been a dedicated MP for Birmingham Erdington since 2010 and that he was a much-loved husband, father and grandfather and will be greatly missed. Downing Street says England's new relaxed travel rules won't affect the country's ability to detect COVID variants. Travellers no longer need to take a pre-departure COVID test before returning to England from today, but they do have to do a lateral flow test when they arrive. Industry expert Paul Charles told GB News that previous travel restrictions were not effective.
They introduced these changes to help fight Omicron. But from the outset, it was clear Omicron was already pretty active in the UK, so they weren't needed. But the government felt, from a health point of view, they had to introduce these tough, onerous restrictions from the outset. They haven't worked. They haven't stopped Omicron coming into the UK.
Boris Johnson's been criticised by his standards advisor over lost WhatsApp messages in the Downing Street flat renovation row. The newly released messages revealed the PM discussed Lord Brownlow's plans for a so-called Great Exhibition at the same time as the financing of the flat. Labour says the messages with the Tory donor raise questions about cash for access and have called for an investigation. The Attorney-General is considering referring the Edward Colston statue toppling case to the Court of Appeal. It's after 4 people were cleared of criminal damage after pulling down a monument of the slave trader during a Black Lives Matter protest in Bristol in June 2020. Suella Braverman says the verdict is causing confusion and may trigger a review. Senior judges would have the chance to clarify the law for future cases. One of Scotland's 2 nuclear power plants has now permanently shut down almost 46 years after it started generating electricity. Hunterston B in North Ayrshire provided jobs for thousands of people in the area. Officials say a failure to solve the problem of hundreds of cracks in bricks surrounding the reactor core meant its closure was inevitable. People in Kazakhstan have been told to stay off the streets as the country's president orders security forces to fire without warning. The statement, broadcast on Kazakh TV, comes amid a violent crackdown on anti-government protests sparked by a fuel price hike. Around 2,500 Russian-led forces have been deployed there at the request of the Kazakhstan president. And Hollywood star Sir Sidney Poitier has died aged 94. The Bahamian-American star won the Oscar for Best Actor for his role in Lilies of the Field, making him the first black man to win the coveted award. Best known for his work during the 50s and 60s, Poitier helped pave the way for generations of African-American actors. Whoopi Goldberg has been among those paying tribute. That's all your news for now. Let's now get back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Karen. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock, my panel. We've got Alan Miller, who's the co-founder of Open for All, Dr. Lisa McKenzie, who's an ethnographer and an academic, and Kevin Craig, who's the founder and CEO of public affairs, PR and digital marketing agency PLMR. Good evening to you three.
Evening.
And also, you know about Dewbs & Co by now. It's not just about us on the panel, it's about you and your thoughts. You can get in touch with me on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. Tell me what is on your mind tonight and let me know your thoughts on all the stories that we go on to discuss. I've had my first email already from Shirley. She says, Michelle, could you say hello to my husband, Roger? He never misses your show, and if we're out, he records it. She goes on to say that, amazingly, he agrees with most of what I say, but Shirley says she's been married to him for 52 years. They've been together since they were 14, and she is still trying to get him to agree with her. So, Roger, when you watch this, start paying attention to Shirley a little bit more. I bet she speaks sense. Most of us women do. Anyway, let's go on to talk about the NHS, shall we? As I was saying earlier, it's another winter, isn't it? Which, of course, you can almost set your clocks by it now, can't you? It must be a little bit embarrassing for some senior figures at the NHS, or at least I would hope it is. And recent figures now show that the number of workers that are off sick or isolating for COVID reasons has trebled since the beginning of December. Just to give you some context there, 39,000 NHS staff just in England are off at the moment. The Royal College of Nursing have said that growing absences meant that the situation was simply not safe. The armed forces have sent 200 personnel to NHS England in London as well to provide cover. And it's not just it's not just in London, I think it's going beyond that as well. And it's great, of course, that the Army have been able to step up. But why on earth do we have to have this situation every single year? And how on earth is the NHS going to cope from April onwards, when tens and tens of thousands of staff could be forced to leave? Alan Miller.
It's a massive problem. I think the thing that we need to understand is that when you've got 1.5 million tests a day going on, that one of the reasons that this is happening, in addition to the last 15 years where there's been consistent pressure on the NHS at winter, is because so many people are testing. They're not very sick, they're certainly not hospitalised, but they're having to stay at home and isolate. That, alongside cuts, alongside 6,000 in the last year, alongside spacing around beds, and alongside other things like GPs not seeing people and them having to go to A&E, and a range of other things that is with this obsession with something that now has got mild symptoms, and yet is putting enormous pressure on there. And on top of this, we've got the terrible moment that in a free society, we're having these draconian vaccine mandates imposed. So over 100,000 brave, courageous staff that have worked for 22 months, we clapped for them, in addition to the 60,000 care home workers, are now going to be forced to leave. Actually, by February the 3rd, if they don't have a procedure, they'll be having to leave by April the 1st. That's also why we at the togetherdeclaration.org have got a campaign against vaccine mandates, where we're working with all sorts of people, with unions.
Well, that's crazy, Alan. It's crazy. The people not getting their vaccines are the problem that we cannot move forward as a country. You heard the Secretary of State today going on about the number of people in intensive care units who haven't had their vaccines. And You know, I don't understand why that isn't one of the things you've just spoken about.
Well, that's a really interesting point. I mean, one of the things that's become very clear with the vaccinations now is that transmissions can happen whether you've been vaccinated or not. So transmissions can be very high, particularly with the third one, with the booster. We're seeing a lot of people who actually have got COVID and it's spread. And actually, Omicron is quite thankfully, unlike Delta and Alpha, is far milder symptoms. If you actually look at the hospital beds and the composition of them, around 86% are of like normal cases. There's around 12% with COVID and about 1.6% with ICU. What we're seeing is a very shrill debate, which is very divisive actually, which is pointing fingers at people that have not, cannot, for whatever reason, made choices. Remember, bodily autonomy and free choice is an important thing. And it's directing the accusations at them. But the actual reality today we're faced with is that if you've had a vaccination, it does not stop transmissions.
It massively, just Lisa, it massively reduces your chance of getting into hospital. Sorry, Lisa.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say is we talk too much about the individual with these debates. We always say, you know, if these individuals have done this or these individuals have done this. But I think I'm going to throw in, it's away from the vaccine, it's away from Omicron, is, as Michelle said, every single year we have this debate. Every single January we're talking about the NHS in pieces. We have images of staff absolutely in bits every year. And we've got to remember that we had 10 years of cuts, year on year on year. And the NHS has been devastated for many years now. And like any social good, housing, education, healthcare, you can't just cut it and then go, oh my God, we're in a big trouble, we better do something. And the do something today is putting the army in, which is quite alarming actually. You know, seeing soldiers in a hospital is quite alarming. And so I would take a wider view on this and start to think about how next January are we not in this position? Or even in April. You know, let's think forward to April and say, let's not be in this position in April. You know,
Well, I dread to think what's going to happen in April, and I really am not saying that lightly because, you know, what they're saying at the moment at the Department of Health and Social Care did an impact assessment of this vaccination policy. It found that as many as 126,000 unvaccinated staff could lose their jobs when this comes into force on April the 1st. 126,000 people.
Can I say something about that? I mean, one of the things is that we've also got millions of people now waiting access that because of lockdowns did not get that. So heart, cancer, stroke, sepsis, a range of other areas. But we should remind ourselves in response to your point that many of these people that have not had a vaccination have had COVID, have recovered from it, have high antibodies.
So why do you think the Secretary of State mentions this statistic? Well, is he just making it up?
Well, I think that we can talk about the statistics. I think that we can go into them at depth.
But very specifically, because Michelle asked, and you referred to it, the statistic, Michelle, that the number of people being admitted to hospital in intensive care units because of COVID, the vast majority haven't had their vaccine. And I'm just saying...
But we're not talking about that, are we? We're talking about...
We're talking about 100... moving forward.
Sorry, we're talking about 126,000 workers who for 22 months have been putting themselves on the line when things were much more dangerous and also we never knew what it was, many of which have had COVID and now being threatened with losing their jobs. And we're also saying that it's the case that if you've had a vaccination or not, transmissions occur. They're meant to protect you. You're talking about people that might be coming into hospital. The point is, if you really have this, and we know that every year the resource is a problem, but now it's particularly, in spite of the year they've had to plan for this in advance when everyone was telling them this, then why would you then threaten people with losing their jobs, some of which have got 4 decades of experience and been bravely working? It makes no sense.
Well, hopefully we can, that discussion can happen with those workers in a way that is not condemning and measured and informed. It's just, it's the same thing like the old days when driving seatbelts were not compulsory in this country. When the legislation was introduced in the 60s, there was an outrage, and it's like the state is not trying to meddle with your life for malevolent reasons.
There's a little bit of a different, and I'm going to bring Lisa in here, there is a little bit of a different. This old seatbelt chestnut, it gets wheeled out all the time.
Yeah.
You can put a seatbelt on, you can take a seatbelt off. If you inject something into your body, it's there 24/7. doing whatever it's doing inside your body. So I don't really buy the seatbelt argument. It gets thrown up all the time. But Lisa, let me ask you this. In the NHS, do you think that every patient-facing person should have to have these vaccines, the COVID vaccines?
I believe that people should make their own minds up. I've always said that.
But if they want to keep their job, I'm talking
to keep the job,
if they want to keep their job.
I have said it before here. I've got relatives who work in care and have not been vaccinated and actually have had COVID. They are caring.
Get off that fence, Mrs.
I
Yes
know.
Or no?
Do I
if
think
someone is on a front
do I think they should be
patient-facing role, should they have to have the COVID vaccine or lose their job? Yes or no?
I don't think they should lose their job. I don't think sacking workers over a vaccine. I don't think so. No.
Right. So you're happy for them to stay in their role if they don't have the vaccination, Alan?
Yeah. Well, can we remember as well that in New York now, it's not just municipal workers; it's all employees have to have a vaccination, and in Austria. And surely the vaccination, as Pfizer and others said, was there to protect the person taking it. That has become abundantly apparent that that's what it's for. And absolutely, for very serious illness and deaths, it can offset that, particularly in vulnerable groups. We've had 135 million jabs now. The 15 million jabs to freedom, where's that gone? We said they would never be doing it with children. Now we're having a discussion of removing people who've worked, we all clapped for, many people clapped for, that many of which have had COVID. And the whole idea that the state dictates, it's not like a seatbelt, because it's like saying, even when you die, you have a choice about whether you deliver your organs or not. When you're dead, right? But now we're getting told by the state, you either do this or you leave.
Well, that's a choice people can make. And yes, Michelle, I do in answer to your question. I think it's about, we're trying to move this country out of this pandemic. And actually, we'd move forward faster if we did have vaccine passports to go out, and like we talked about before, dancing.
But they've been proved that they're barely effective.
Well, where's that from?
And by the way, if you look at Scotland and if you look at Wales, two places that have had these kind of measures for quite some time, their cases are skyrocketing when you look in them comparatively to ours. So those measures, they are, and I do want to push you on this point, Kevin, because I understand your sentiment. Your sentiment is get vaccine passports, get everyone vaccinated. But when you actually look at some of the evidence, and let's pick on vaccine passports as an example, they are not proven to be hugely effective, if at all effective, when it comes to stopping transmission.
But we haven't tried them in the major cities across England, the hotspots.
What about Scotland and Wales?
Do you know what worries me in this? I'll tell you what really worries me in this debate. It's that stigmatisation of groups of people. That is really worries me, that when we've got, it's their fault. You know, and I think you were doing a bit of that with, in order to move on, these people have got to do this.
No, these people are my relatives. You know, they work in the NHS.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not stigmatising anyone, but we can talk about on great programmes like this all we want about the NHS winter crisis every year. This current situation is solely down to the pandemic, and if we don't talk about the fact that the unvaccinated are stopping us moving forward, then we're ignoring a massive part of the debate.
It's not actually true that this is due just to the pandemic. It's actually due to the policy of lockdowns, in addition to the fact that every year for 15 years we've had this crisis.
I want us to move on.
We've also got an issue of management, we've got an issue of payment, we've got an issue... But if you look at France, for instance, where you could not go anywhere without vaccine passports, we saw transmissions go through the roof. If you look at Gibraltar, where 100% are vaccinated, had vaccine, it's the same thing. The whole idea that you show me your papers, which takes us into an unprecedented position, and it has, even if it did reduce, even if it did do something that would prevent something medically, we'd still have to ask, as a principle, should we be showing strangers our medical information?
I've got to say, that scares me.
No to that. But Kevin, I just want to ask you a question.
Showing papers.
These unvaccinated workers that you don't want to continue in patient-facing roles. No, the people that don't want to be vaccinated, and it is indeed their choice. So these people that you don't want to continue in patient-facing roles if they're unvaccinated, are you OK with them helping out now then in the winter?
Yes, because we've put a timeline on, the government's put a timeline on, but the point by which they have to choose to get vaccinated. We're in a crisis, but long term, I do believe it's for the greater good of the country, the NHS and people who are dying of this, that health workers do get vaccinated unless they've got health exemption.
And where do you sit? Because to me, this conversation gets lost a little bit because we go vaccine or unvaccine. That's the kind of binary choice. You're vaccinated or you're not. But isn't this surely about an immunity, an antibody immunity, which is what a vaccine stimulates? And if that is the case, then why, and I really think it's quite bad actually, why on earth, if we can all agree that what the vaccine does is give you a collection of antibodies, which by then definition then gives you an element of immunity, why then is natural immunity completely disregarded? And would you be comfortable?
That's a great point.
Would you be comfortable, Kevin, if you do concede that the vaccine gives you antibodies? Would you be comfortable then to say, right, if you don't want to have a vaccination for whatever reason, we would allow you to actually have an antibody test instead?
Well, I think that's a common sense suggestion, Michelle. It's not about the dogma. Well, I think everybody, even on a debate like this, I think we all want the same. And I think how could anybody involved in policy making disagree with what you just said?
Well, there you go. And lots of you are agreeing and disagreeing. The emails, I have to say, are absolutely flying in. I'm going to pull some of those together and go through some of them after the break. But I will take a very short break now. We'll be back. And when we come back, I'll be talking about the Home Secretary, Priti Patel. She's now looking at considering making adult migrants who pose as child asylum seekers face an array of tests, including perhaps X-ray age checks. What do you think to that? Do you think it's long overdue, or do you think it's outrageous? We'll have that and more after the break. Don't go away.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, it's looking rather changeable across the UK through this weekend, with some heavy rain and some strong winds for many parts on Saturday. Sunshine and showers, though, by Sunday, and temperatures will be a little bit higher than they have been of late. If we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see the reason why. This frontal system will continue to spread in from the west over the next 24 hours, bringing that heavy rain and strong winds. But ahead of it, some quite cold air in place across the UK. So as we see rain clearing eastern parts, a real risk of some icy patches across parts of England, with a warning in force for that. But cloud will thicken as we head through the night as rain spreads its way eastward. Some of that rain could be quite heavy, and we could see a spell of snow across high ground in northern England and Scotland for a time once again. It'll still be cold in the east, but further towards the west, those temperatures will lift through the night, so turning noticeably milder as we head through the early hours of Saturday morning. So we get off to a rather wet start on Saturday morning, a really quite disappointing start to the weekend, really. Some quite heavy rain around, still some snow across higher ground of Scotland for a time, and particularly heavy rain across South Wales and southwest England through the day, and still those strong winds accompany that rain as well. Now, gradually that will clear the southeast later on in the day, and behind it, brighter, sunnier skies. Still a rash of showers, though, and again wintry across parts of the north, and still staying windy with gales towards the southwest. A milder day, though, like I said. Now, through the rest of Saturday into the evening and overnight, still a mixture then by this point of clear spells and showers. Some of the showers, again, could be quite heavy, particularly towards the north and the west. Still wintry over higher ground in particular. But in those clear skies, with that cold air in place once again, it will turn chilly. Temperatures in towns and cities probably hovering just above freezing, but colder than that in the countryside. So again, we could see some frost and ice around. So as we start Sunday morning, then generally a brighter start to the day compared to Saturday morning. Some sunshine first thing. Still, though, some showers towards the north and the west. Again, wintry in places. Through the day, some of those showers will start to feed their way eastwards, and we could see a more organised band of rain and hill snow through the afternoon. Temperatures a little bit lower than they will be on Saturday. I think feeling chilly if you're in those showers. Quick look ahead to the early part of next week. Then a lot of cloud around, some patchy rain in places, but gradually turning drier through the week and staying mild.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Kern. A special hello as well to anyone listening on the radio. This is a new thing. We're getting all high tech at GB News. You're listening to me, Michelle Dewberry. Just a brief reminder to you, if you're listening and not watching, as to who my panel is. We've got Alan Miller, who's the co-founder of the campaign group Open for All. We've got Dr. Lisa McKenzie, who's an ethnographer and an academic. And we've got Kevin Craig, who is the founder and CEO of the agency PLMR. So good evening to all of you. As I was mentioning just before the break, lots of you are getting in contact about the situation regarding the NHS and how we are going to continue. I mean, how every winter we have this dilemma, and it's going to be made a whole lot worse once we're moving out of winter, but getting into April when we lose tens and tens of thousands of staff. There's a real divide, I have to say, coming in from the viewers. Pat has said they definitely should be vaccinated. They are potentially nursing very ill people. Why should the patient be subjected to contracting the virus from a non-vaccinated person? That's from Pat. What else? We've got Kathleen, who says, again, Michelle, all people who care for the vulnerable should be vaccinated. Why are you trying to defend them? Charlotte says, I completely agree with an antibody test being given the same importance as vaccine status. If you've got natural immunity, it should definitely count. So there you go. Just do keep them coming in. They're flying in. I'm trying to get through as many as I can throughout the programme. And just a reminder that first and foremost, I don't advise or not advise that you get vaccinated or you don't. I neither condone or anyone's choices. For me, the thing that I feel very passionate about is personal choice. It must always be personal choice. And I do also believe that natural immunity consistently gets overlooked in pretty much all of these conversations and policies. And I really dislike that. And also just a reminder to many of you that are writing in saying you have to be vaccinated so that they don't pass this on to the vulnerable people. Of course, the vaccinated can also catch and transmit vaccination, but nonetheless, it's a conversation, it's a debate, and of course, it splits and divides an opinion. I don't think my opinion's any better than anyone else's. It's just an opinion, and it's a debate and a discussion, and all views are welcome here on Dewbs and Kerr. Let's move on there and talk about another topic that's got people talking today. Adult migrants who are posing as children, asylum seekers, could face X-ray age checks. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has unveiled a scientific committee to scrutinise ways of analysing migrants who claim to be under 18. The experts on the committee will look at methods that other countries use to determine people's true ages, including things like X-ray examinations. Opponents, though, say that the plans are flawed and dangerous. But Priti Patel says the practice of single-grown adult men masquerading as children, claiming an asylum, is, I quote, an appalling abuse of our system. Do you think she's right? Lisa?
This is another one of those stories that every year comes out, you know, another fear story about migrants. This sort of story really depresses me, actually. We've just talked, and we talk a lot about freedom of choice and looking after our own bodies and being able to make choices about our own bodies. And here we are saying that children have got to be X-rayed. That That blows my mind, and it just takes me...
hang on a minute, let's be clear.
does.
We're not saying that children have to be extra. What we're saying is that if somebody comes across without identification documents and says, I am a child...
Yeah,
then they need to be assessed to see whether or not they are. Isn't that just common sense?
No, it's not common sense. I think it's horrific. I'll be honest, I think this sort of thing is horrific because we've just said, you know, having choice around your medical status is really important, and I believe that. But then children, so... You know, you're sort of assuming that they're lying when they come in, that children should be X-rayed. No, I think we have to have a level of humanity here. I watched a programme the other night, actually, and I really say that people should watch it. It was a film about the Windermere Children. They were children that had come from the concentration camps in 1945, and they were housed in Lake Windermere and looked after, tried to help to get back into society. They thought they would be children, but actually most of them were adolescents. They were teenagers.
Because I think you're right, that film is a cracker. Can I ask you a question, though? The problem I've got is, last year, it's on record that there was well over 1,000 people, right, who'd lied about their age.
Well, there was 1,696 age dispute cases in which an individual's claim to be a child was disputed, and around 2/3 of those were found to be adults.
Right. And I think there's a lot of people, whether they're left-wing or right-wing, who have got sympathy for a fellow human being, you know, fleeing between countries, etc. But they also know that one of the things we haven't got right in this country yet is making our systems and processes work fairly and openly. And they go, well, other countries around Europe are checking for this. They're not inhumane regimes.
It just depresses me. When we're talking about children... Because potentially, until you prove they're not, they are potentially children.
But hang on, so how can you prove... So let me just push you a little bit on this, if you don't mind.
No, you can't. No, you can't. I mean, my son went... In 2004, my son, when he was at school, there was a lot of kids from Iraq came into his school, a lot of refugees. And I remember seeing them in town with him, and he was saying hello to them. And I remember seeing them and going, who were these men? And he was like, oh, they're such and such from school. So I am not saying that this doesn't happen, or I'm not saying that these are children that perhaps don't look like children. They've come from, you know, war-torn countries and had very different experiences to our kids. So I'm not saying that people aren't worried.
So
I am saying that I personally do not like the idea of X-raying refugee children.
So let me just, before I move on to bring Alan in, is your suggestion then that any man or woman, any person that comes over, crosses the channel and says, because let's be realistic about this, you get very different rights, you get very different care, you get very different access if you say that you're a child. And I think that's a very well-known thing. So are you saying that anyone that comes over and says, I am a child, should just be respected as a child, treated like a child, and off you go as a child?
I think we should have more humanity around that, and you know, and know that if we've got 18.
No, I'm asking you a straight question. If someone comes over,
I think we do have to. I think we do have to have an element of believing people. Yes.
So if a man comes over.
But how old do we say? You know, if he looks 35 or 40, do we say that he's a child? Then no. I think there is a point.
What's your point?
We have to question that.
What's your cut-off before I go to Alan?
My cut-off is not medically intervening in people, not looking at in the teeth.
I've not got a straight answer from you. So if someone comes over that is a man and says, I am a child, you're going to go, OK, no problem. Off you go into a children's home and off you go to school.
It's not, but it's never that simple, is it? It's never that simple.
Well,
you know, does a 17-year-old look like an 18-year-old? Does a 15-year-old look like an 18-year-old?
Come on, Lisa.
I think we have to...
You've just told me that your kid went to school and said that these grown men was in his class.
Yeah, they were. That was true. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, my God. But they had been in a war.
Alan Miller.
Well, I think there's a few things. I think that a sovereign nation of borders is very important, as is the sovereignty of citizens. And I think in a really strong, free, sovereign nation, we should also have compassion, but we should also have authority, and authority to make judgments and execute them confidently. We've seen an abdication of a lot of those things in the last couple of decades, and instead we have these sort of technological solutions or other things, rather than exercising judgment and using discretion. I think it's important when these fearful things come out to say that 1,100 people coming in where there's these disputes, it raises the question about how they're being processed and questions. It's not a technological question, it's one about authority and confidence in what you're doing and being able to do it. I do think that there's an element of the fearful headline here, because I think generally a couple of things. Look at America. The example of migration is invariably migrants always bring much more better than they do harm, generally. Specifically, there can be issues, obviously, like with anyone. And also, they've come from some of the worst places and the worst situations. I think it says a lot about society. If we feel confident and dynamic, we've got a robust economy, we invest in them. And I am concerned with things like X-rays and stuff like that. It abdicates authority, but also a bit like the vaccine passport thing. You end up saying, we'll have X-rays here, 1 minute it's for these, the next minute, who else is it for? A bit like vaccine passports and everything else. And we've seen in the last couple of years where these measures started getting used against our own citizens. And actually, if you go to the continent in Europe and places like Australia and Canada, who would have thought, at far more horrific levels. So I get concerned with it, and I think that we absolutely have to have rules, have to recognise them, but we also should have confidence and authority and be welcoming, and I think we can do that if we're confident in ourselves.
Kevin?
Well, I just heard what the folks have said, but I don't think that most people, whether they're left or right wing or down the middle, will have a problem with a simple test just to check that people are not lying, you know, and it can be done humanely and with compassion and with empathy for people who are living lives so much harder than ours. I totally get that. I really, really do understand that. But we can't be afraid or be naive to not, you know, to check that people are lying, because otherwise you do end up like with Lisa's son's situation, where there's a bloke who's 6'6" who's wearing short trousers, you know, clearly doesn't belong.
You know what, I'm not saying that any of these, I'm not saying, I don't know how old they were, but I'm just saying, I did kind of think, who were they, Leon? You know, why are you talking to this man? And he did say there were kids in his school. So, but what I want to do here is, I want to, I suppose, protect the right of the child. Yeah. And if they are saying they are children, and if, you know, under what circumstances do we start looking at people's teeth and taking X-rays? Is it all kids? Is it from when, you know, we've got to do these checks on all kids?
Well, if I was doing it, I mean, I would exercise basic common sense. If you've got a 5-year-old child, you're not going to start pinning the kid down and X-raying their teeth, or else, you know, would have all kinds of problems.
I would hope we wouldn't.
Absolutely not. However, surely, as much as we talk about, we've got, you know, processes, we've got sovereignty, you've got this, you've got that. Surely you've also got safeguarding as well. Yeah. So if you have a case where it is borderline or, you know, pretty obvious that this person, it looks more like an adult than a child, you have a responsibility for the safeguarding of the children. If this person's going to end up in a children's home, if they're going to end up in a school or whatever it is, you have a responsibility to check that that person is who they say they are. And assuming that they haven't kept hold of their documentation for whatever reason, which would put that to bed, if they haven't got that, then I think it should be absolutely our right to make sure that that person is who they say that they are. And if you are indeed a person in need and you are a minor or whatever and you want help and support and guidance, I don't see why you would object to something as long as it was conducted with dignity and respect.
Well said.
But what do we do then? So I'll throw this one out. So what do you do? Someone's come over, he or she has said she's 16. We find out that they're 18 or 19. Do we then send them away? Do we not care anymore?
Well, I think if someone comes over who's 16, and I don't know why you would say that we don't care.
No, I'm not saying you don't care, but I'm saying because there is, like you said, there are very different policies and rules around children and adults when they come in as refugees.
Yeah, right. So I think
if they come in at 6, so if you say you're 16, but really you're 18. I don't know.
Well, if you're 18, you're an adult, aren't you?
Yes,
so
you are.
There's not a grey line. If you're 18, you're an adult, and if you're 16, you're a child.
So do we send them back?
One goes down route A, one goes down route B.
Yeah, but
you don't get sent back or not based on age, do you? That's not the determining
No, but
factor.
that's what we're doing here, though.
I think the other thing is that when we make policies around very particular examples, and then people get very nervous, and you know, you cite some examples. It does get generalised. So we're now looking at things like biometrics for citizens, facial recognition with CCTV, and a range of other things that are happening, thermal mapping, of people that are moving around the country. These are all discussions that are happening at the moment with police forces and the state.
Don't tell me you've got a problem with CCTV, Alan.
Now, the question becomes, when you have facial mapping and a range of other things like that and biometrics, is to what extent does that just continue ad infinitum? You know, that's an important question for us as citizens and for, you know, freedom. If we think about being a strong sovereign nation that believes in these values, then they end up sort of eviscerating them, emptying them out of their content.
Well, there you go. Quite a lively debate there. Where do you sit on it? Lots of emails are flying in. Do you think that if someone comes over and it's borderline, because let's be honest, I think what we're talking about here is borderline. If someone evidently is an adult, it's not going to happen. If someone is evidently a child, it's not going to happen. It's borderline that we're talking about here. Do you think that those people should be required to be proven to be children? Or do you think, as Lisa does, that absolutely not? We should take people on face value. Going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will be talking about, well, I'll tell you what I'm supposed to be talking about. I've got some song lyrics here, but I'm not going to sing. Anyone that's heard me sing these song lyrics, you don't want me singing on a Friday afternoon, so instead I'll just say it. The Love Islander, Molly May Haig. Is that even her name? Is it Haig? I've got to say, I've never heard of this lady before today, but apparently she's very successful indeed, and she's caused a bit of outrage online and beyond today, basically saying that anyone can pretty much be successful, can be the likes of a millionaire if you only work hard enough. Is that true? We'll have that and more after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry. I have to say, lots of you getting in touch there about that last topic. Most of you are saying that when it comes to borderline cases in particular, that you should be able to check that people are who they say they are. Like so many emails coming in on that. And also, Tony has said, how is it okay to basically try and force British people to be vaccinated, but then it's so upsetting to give someone else an X-ray? Well, I don't know, Tony, you tell me. Anyway, just for the benefit of everyone that is listening to us on the radio tonight, good evening to you. I am, of course, Michelle Dewberry. Alan Miller, co-founder of campaign group Open for All, joins me, as does Dr. Lisa McKenzie, ethnographer and academic, and Kevin Craig, who is the founder and CEO of PLMR. And if you've just joined us, you've missed our conversations about the army getting involved with the NHS, and you've just missed the conversation about Priti Patel's latest ideas to check that migrants who say that they're children are indeed children. Anyway, let's move on, though, to the next topic. You might have seen there's been a bit of a hoo-ha. Well, it's pretty much everywhere today, online. It's been on lots of the TV shows, lots of conversations happening about it. And it's all about a former Love Island star and social media influencer, Molly-Mae Hague. I do have to caveat this and say I've never watched an episode of Love Island in my life. Apparently very popular, so it is, and so is she. Anyway, she's been slammed for making what some are calling Thatcherite comments on poverty and hard work. Let's have a listen.
Raised in different ways, and we do have different financial situations, but I think if you want something enough, you can achieve it, and it just depends to what lengths you want to go to get where you want to be in the future. And I'll go to any length.
She'll go to any length. I think the conversation kind of also went on. A lot of people have got a little bit upset. She was basically saying that everyone's pretty much got 24 hours in a day and you can do with them what you want. Many people are saying, well, hang on a second. She's come from what some say is a privileged background. They're saying that she hasn't really had to work as hard as many people in real poverty, etc. The comments were made in an interview series on YouTube, by the way, which was called The Diary of a CEO. Before we get into the panel debate, it is worth saying that early today, Molly released a statement saying, if you listen to this interview, you can see the whole conversation was about my own personal circumstances and how I grew up. And this small clip in the conversation was talking about a quote that inspires me. And that was a quote about, as I just said, Kevin Craig, the 24 hours in the day. Have to say, it's really cooked up a bit of a storm, all this. What do you think to it?
I think that if Molly-Mae was maybe a man of a different age, she wouldn't be getting so much flack. Arnold Schwarzenegger has done one of the most successful TED Talks ever, and his is the same message, and his was about how you are productive in the day. She actually comes from a family, and I know too much about this because of my 16-year-old daughter, Nuala. I've been forced to watch Love Island.
That's his excuse. Look, right? I'm forced, he says, to watch it. Yeah, all right.
I have seen several series. It's good telly, bit of a guilty pleasure. But she's got, as I recall, two parents who were police officers. She didn't start off privileged. She's made a huge amount of money. She posts now, it's rumoured that 10K, she receives £10,000 for each post. She was just saying in this broader piece that in this country, you can achieve anything if you work hard enough, which is broadly true, but it's not the same for everyone, obviously. And the people that have been wound up by it, of course, are talking about folks working 12, 14-hour shifts in public service. Everyone doesn't have the same 24 hours, but I think she's being piled into on Twitter, and I don't think it's entirely fair, because Britain is still a country where you can achieve your dreams, whatever they are. They don't have to be financial. It's a brilliant country, and that's what she's buying into.
Indeed. Alan Miller, can anyone be successful if they just work hard?
I think the thing is that there's a few things about this. It's really interesting and it's complex and you have to unpick it a little bit. Firstly, there's uproar because people are like, you're not allowed to say that, which people say about lots of things. So on the one hand, you have this young woman who's very successful, who has been ambitious and obviously use the things around her and use this reality TV show to get the best for herself. And I think that aspiration is important and good and ambition is great. She then gets some things that are taken maybe out of context or not, and people explode and say you're not allowed to say that. Having said that, at the same time, we've got a celebrity-obsessed culture where the news and many people are obsessing about it. Obviously, brands use it to sell things and we get eyeballs. I don't think young people and people like that are actually stupid, or adults, but particularly young people. They all think that, oh, everyone's stupid and they just follow things and they don't see it. So I think people can discern things they know about reality. So I think the aspirational part of what she's saying is actually good. I also think it's a bit silly to say, I just say it and it happens, right? Or I just imagine it and it happens, right? Obviously, many people live in a variety of circumstances, as they always have. I don't want to patronise people that are not earning enough money or whatever. I think the problem is in Britain is that there may be many opportunities, far better than other places. However, since the 70s, our economy has been sluggish. If you look at our wages and our productivity, they have not increased substantially relatively as they should have done. If you look at the development in Germany, if you look at America, and we need to encourage as much ambition, the kind of aspiration she had for ordinary people. I'd like a Ferrari for everyone, right? I'd like everyone to become wealthy and transform themselves, earn a lot of money and do it. I don't think you can just do it by saying it, although sometimes saying it helps do it. She also makes the point about perseverance and giving up some things. You get nothing in life if you pursue it without sacrifices. We don't talk about sacrifice anymore, or diligence, or hard work. People expect that somehow they're just going to get these things and they're entitled to them. So I think then the great thing about ordinary working class people was always that thing that you work, it's not about charity, and you take yourself seriously. And I think we need to instill more of those things at school and in society, in a sense of pride in what you do, but also people should get paid more generally, consistently in society.
Well said.
Lisa Mackenzie.
But I'm going to bring a whole different...
This is your forte.
It is my forte. Well, you know, I saw this last night, it started popping up on Twitter. I had lots of thoughts about it. Today, I feel something else. She has been piled on, and I think unnecessarily. She's a young woman, you know, she's living in a world that I don't really know about, you know, influencing. It's something very young. She's being piled on mainly by the Twitterati because she doesn't know about people who work in factories. So, and I kind of understand that argument. You know, Molly May, she's part of Pretty Little Things. I did watch Love Island. I quite liked her. You know, I've got friends who's got her twirling combs and stuff. So,
others are available.
Yeah. So I do know who she is. But I think what the argument that the Twitterati are saying is that she doesn't understand about working in factories. You know, she doesn't know what it's like to make the products that she's selling. And that is a fair enough argument that, you know, the 24 hours that she's got of promoting them on Instagram is not the same as the 24 hours of women in particular who are working in Leicester making Pretty Little Things, sometimes for not even minimum wage. So I get the argument, although saying that, having a look at Twitter a bit closer today, the people who are raging and screaming about this are people who have also never worked in a factory as well. So that's kind of annoyed me because I have worked in a factory. I worked for Pretty Polly making tights for 10 years.
Did you?
Yeah. When I was 16, I left school, made Marks and Spencer's knickers. Then I went to the Pretty Polly.
Did you?
Yeah, and I worked at Pretty Polly and making knickers for 10 years. So what I'd like to say, I'm throwing things around now, I'm that passionate, is...
You're that passionate about your M&S pants, and the pens are flying everywhere.
Pretty Polly ties. But I remember when Pretty Polly left Sutton in Ashfield, where I'm from...
You've got to make this a short story,
right? Okay,
because we're almost out of time.
Okay, nothing replaced it, and now we've got places all over the country where we once had very skilled workers, has got nothing. And so I think this has been an interesting debate because it's allowed us to talk about how is Britain successful.
Yeah.
Well, Timothy has messaged in and says, this is very simple, basically. I think he's saying the left have politicised petty jealousy. There you go. That's what Timothy says. Hold that thought. Oh, you can't see. If you're listening on the radio right now, you can't see that Kevin has got steam coming out of his ears pretty much based on that last comment. But I'm going to pause it there because it is the winter. It's dark nights. Many people have, what's that thing called? Seasonal affectiveness disorder or something like that, SAD for short. And if you're one of those, here's a little something that you might want to take some inspiration from these cows in Turkey. The farmers, these cows are apparently quite down. It's getting dark there or whatever. And these cows, they're not really producing in the way that they should. So the farmer has come up with a solution. Now I'm going to get it on my screens. And for those of you that are listening as opposed to watching, what I'm sharing on my screen right now is this very smart farmer has decided to fit his cows with some virtual reality goggles. So the cows, whilst they are indeed in a barn in the winter, to them, looking through their eyes, they would almost think that they're in a beautiful, sunny field. So there you go. Yes, they're looking at the pastures and the sunshine. Does any of my panel have seasonal affectiveness disorder? Sad?
Yeah,
No?
I do. I get it.
Do you?
I get really depressed in winter when there's dark nights here. Do I want to be on a VR machine, though, hooked up, looking at sunny fields every day? I don't think so, no.
Well, that might be the answer.
World's gone mad.
Well, maybe the world's just gone sensible, because actually, sometimes the reality that we live in, the actual real reality that we live in, this virtual reality is probably a whole lot more sensible. Kevin is groaning to my right-hand side.
Nothing has made me want to go, Michelle, dairy-free more than this story. You know, I think if we're seriously putting these goggles on count, you know, count me out. You know, I'm done. I'll go and try one of those oat alternatives. You know, is it the 1st of April?
No, it's not. And I tell
Right.
you what, I'm going to hold you to that. If I see you coming in here drinking cow's milk, I'll remind you of that. Anyway, that is all we've got time for on this Friday evening. Thank you very much for all of your company. And my panel, Alan Miller, Dr. Lisa McKenzie and Kevin Craig, thank you for your company. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and I shall be back exactly the same time on Monday, 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock. I'll see you then.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, it's looking rather changeable across the UK through this weekend, with some heavy rain and some strong winds for many parts on Saturday. Sunshine and showers, though, by Sunday, and temperatures will be a little bit higher than they have been of late. If we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see the reason why. This frontal system will continue to spread in from the west over the next 24 hours, bringing that heavy rain and strong winds. But ahead of it, some quite cold air in place across the UK. So as we see rain clearing eastern parts, a real risk of some icy patches across parts of England, with a warning of force for that. But cloud will thicken as we head through the night as rain spreads its way eastward. Some of that rain could be quite heavy, and we could see a spell of snow across high ground in northern England and Scotland for a time once again. It'll still be cold in the east, but further towards the west, those temperatures will lift through the night, so turning noticeably milder as we head through the early hours of Saturday morning. So we get off to a rather wet start on Saturday morning, a really quite disappointing start to the weekend, really. Some quite heavy rain around, still some snow across high ground of Scotland for a time, and particularly heavy rain across South Wales and southwest England through the day, and still those strong winds accompany that rain as well. Now, gradually that will clear the southeast later on in the day, and behind it, brighter, sunnier sky, still a rash of showers though, and again wintry across parts of the north, and still staying windy with gales towards the southwest. A milder day though, like I said. Now, through the rest of Saturday into the evening and overnight, still a mixture then by this point of clear spells and showers. Some of the showers again could be quite heavy, particularly towards the north and the west, still wintry over higher ground in particular, but in those clear skies with that cold air in place once again, it will turn chilly. Temperatures in towns and cities probably hovering just above freezing, but colder than that in the countryside. So again, we could see some frost and ice around. So as we start Sunday morning, then generally a brighter start to the day compared to Saturday morning. Some sunshine first thing. Still, though, some showers towards the north and the west. Again, wintry in places. Through the day, some of those showers will start to feed their way eastwards, and we could see a more organised band of rain and hill snow through the afternoon. Temperatures a little bit lower than they will be on Saturday. I think feeling chilly if you're in those showers. Quick look ahead to the early part of next week, then. A lot of cloud around, some patchy rain in places, but gradually turning drier through the week and staying mild.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will